I don't know if you're aware of how the voting process goes and how the whole discussion happens, but someone
Obviously, there's drinking involved. Obviously, I mean, you vote.
there was no drinking, I can
Yes.
promise. But someone in the room advocated very strongly for you, and they spoke very passionately about the 2016 finale, and it became a little bit of an issue, and because
Okay.
the person felt that you were wronged, you were wronged, and you know you left the sport right after that, and I think a lot of people have always felt that you believed also that you were wronged in 2016, and I'm wondering if all these years later, if you have anything to say about that, if the way that that race ended played a role in your decision to walk away.
Thanks for asking that. Definitely, I would rather not have had a caution come out. But you never know the outcome of that. And like I said to Jim Utter, I wouldn't change a thing. I doubt, I think things would have been a lot different if we would have won that championship. And I really like how things have gone since then. So I don't, I wouldn't change it. As far as the bigger picture, though, I mean, I think what you're really asking is, was I very frustrated how NASCAR ran that event? And I can answer that by saying NASCAR is in the business of creating a sport that serves the fans. And I know from some conversations that were private that NASCAR is doing the very best they can to do that. And I respect that. The outcome for me at certain points in my career, that race is a good example. I did not like it. But I 100%, I respect the sport. I respect the people that run it. It gave me a life and opportunities that I could never have imagined. But as far as being an impetus for my stepping away, I'll go right back to what I said, not clearly enough when I did it, obviously. I just needed time. I realized I woke up and right towards the end of my career, I realized I'm not spending any time doing really anything other than racing. And that time I never get back. Two, I really felt that I had done everything I personally wanted to do in the sport. We talked about jujitsu. I felt like I was a black belt at racing. I understood basically that I was the best that I could be. And third, I escaped without any big injuries. And the more we looked at that stuff, that's a serious thing. The stuff that Dale Jr. so bravely discussed, the things that NASCAR has been working on lately. I felt like I was very fortunate there. So, yeah, I think that my favorite way to race is a whole season for a championship, not one last restart. That's me. I like cars to drive a certain way. Maybe other people don't, but yeah, no, like I'm 100% grateful to NASCAR. No hard feelings there.
But did you feel wronged or cheated in 2016?
I don't believe that um, I'd like to just say that I officially respect NASCAR running the sport they need the way they need to run it. I don't want to bring that up and say anything negative.
Okay. Thank you very much, Carl. Good to see you.
Hey, yeah, thanks a lot, John.
Hey, thank you, Carl. Hey, I'm curious, when a lot of athletes, when they leave, they still have a presence, and you were able to, walk away and kind of break that chain, and did not show up for a long time. And I'm curious, in coming back to Darlington and Kansas and some other places, some other things, what brought you back? Why did you come back? Because I know you've had all these great experiences, but obviously the way that ended,
Yeah.
there certainly was the obvious sense of frustration, and that can be a very bitter pill that for some people they don't, I don't say get over, but they don't move past. And what brought you back to be
Oh,
a little bit more involved in this way?
sure. I may have been unclear. I want to be very explicit. Like I want to say that I did not leave the sport because of the way 2016 ended. Period. That's not is that what you were implying there?
I'm just there were a lot of things. Obviously, you had a great career, but you
Yeah.
you made a break from the sport, and
Yeah.
you know, a lot of times we see people come back. There was a long stretch where you were kind of this Bigfoot character
Yeah,
that
right.
we always heard about but never
Yeah,
saw.
I had the beard. I saw the beard.
So I'm just curious what
Yeah.
brought you back, or what brought the interest back, because you didn't have to come back. You didn't have to take a part in anything
Yeah.
else in the sport. You didn't have to go
Oh,
back to
okay.
Darling.
No, okay. So two parts. When I stepped away from the sport, it's very hard for me to do. Okay. There were so many, and I've learned this. This is how life works in my world. There are a lot of shiny things out there that compete for attention. What I realized, though, there are very few things, all of us on this call, there are certain things that if you don't show up, nobody else is going to do. Okay. And so for a large part of my career, I felt like I needed to show up and I needed to be in that seat driving those race cars. I felt like that's what I was supposed to be doing. Around 2015, 16, really 2016 is the first time I looked around and thought, wow, there's some other things that I really need to tend to in life. My family is nobody else is going to take my role there. So to be able to step away from something as shiny and as exciting as NASCAR, right? I mean, still to this day, when people call me and ask me to drive race cars, there's like a young man in me that says, this is the greatest thing ever. It's Christmas. They're calling me to drive a race car. If I go down that path, I'm not going to do it halfway. So for me, I had to make a very clean break, and that's just me. I know that was taken by some people as disrespect for the sport. I'm certain it was to some degree. I could have done it better. I wish that part I could do better. But the impetus for coming back was after a number of years, so many people reached out to me. They were so kind to me, and to be honored with something like that NASCAR 75th or 75 driver program. Those were such giant honors. I thought, you know what, I've got to go let people know how much I appreciate this. And so that was the impetus for coming back, that people were reaching out to me with such kindness, such grace for the way, I've done things that really was special to me. And I feel like I have to respect that.
Last year's inductee, Jimmy Johnson, is still racing. So do you have any chance that you will get back behind the wheel? Thank you.
No. Thank you for asking though, Bob. Not of a cup car, I don't think. I did enjoy running the sim a little bit last year, and I think I'm going to go do a little bit more of that just to try to understand. I mean, I love driving cars, and I'm very curious. I did get the chance to talk to Jimmy recently, and I mean, Jimmy's Jimmy. He's he's a race car driver, and he's going to be doing it forever. But yeah, for me, no plans right now.
You have Carl Edwards. And when I really started paying attention to NASCAR, I was working for a TV station in Lansing, Michigan. So we had MIS in our market. We had 2 cup races at the time. So this was 2006, 2007. And so this was, Carl Edwards at that point. He was one of the guys right then. Jimmy Johnson, Dale Jr. But I just remember Carl Edwards, obviously, with the flip. And he was another guy, that would what he tried to kind of fake punch Matt Kenseth the one time, but a guy who won a lot of races. You'd see him on the cover of Men's Health magazine because he's all jacked. Still is, by the way. You can still tell that he's freaking in the weight room all the time. Obviously, he left early. It seems like he was pissed off about the way things ended at Homestead and felt like probably he was cheated out of a championship there. So a really interesting guy, a Missouri guy. I'm sitting here in St. Louis. He's from Columbia. So just give us your thoughts on Carl Edwards.
Yeah, Charlie, my take's a little bit different. Just a little bit. Number one, I don't know anything about the Hall of Fame. I don't know what the criteria is. I'm sure there's a mission statement, and I don't know what the criteria is to be a Hall of Fame member. My issue with Carl is this. We never heard of Carl Edwards. He came into our sport. He did his thing. Tremendous race car driver. Golly, he's talented. But he came in, he got his fortune, and when he left the sport never to be heard or seen from again, right? That's my problem with him being a Hall of Fame member. Give back to the sport. Excuse me. Where is your give back to the sport, Carl? Right? So I'm thinking about that. And then my kids were talking about that last night. And my daughters and my son, we're all into this stuff pretty hard. They're better at this stuff than me, right? Actually. they dig up stuff and they point out Carl's history. They point out his stats, right? And because I discounted him by leaving our sport and not being involved after, I kind of threw his stats out. Didn't think about them. His stats are incredible, dude. Yeah. So do we put guys in because of the stats, their contribution to the sport, or the impact they made? Right. When Carl was here, he made a hell of an impact. And what you just said is one of the reasons. You're from the Midwest. Carl's from the Midwest. You latched on to him, right? How many tens of thousands of folks and new fans did we get in the Midwest because of Carl Edwards, right? I'm sitting here justifying to myself, to y'all, why I think Carl belongs to be in there, deserves to be in there, when originally I did not think he did, because I felt like he didn't help our sport when he left, right? But the impact he had when he was here, pretty substantial, dude. Pretty substantial.
Yeah, I'm looking right now. So 6 truck wins out of 60 races and a 4th place finish in 2004, 38 Xfinity wins and a championship in 2007, 28 Cup wins, and finished second twice. And it's funny. I like your perspective there. And I'm as a person who's always worked in the media, I also just always am drawn to storylines. And for me, I think the way Carl Edwards left the sport makes him even more interesting. Now, to you, I get it. I get it. Say, hey, he needs back at the tracks for the alumni. I know he came last year for the top 75 deal, but I understand your point of saying no, he needs to come back. He needs to help out the sport, but kind of being you said aloof earlier, I believe, talking about somebody, but being kind of that recluse where you don't hear from him very often. It's kind of more mysterious. I'm trying to think, who's like that? A St. Louis Cardinals old school and what? Phillies. Steve Carlton was like that.
Carlton.
Steve
I didn't know
Carlton
that.
is a guy that because you never heard from him, it was more fascinating. Like, what is he up to? Why does he not want to do interviews? And I think there's that with Carl. Like, it adds to his mystique, I feel like, that you don't hear from him very much. It makes me more interested in Carl Edwards.
Yeah, and the story, if we ever get the true story, it's been hints and rumors and all that to why, he ran second to Tony at Homestead and lost the championship. That's the last time we saw him race, right? And then the rumors and the stories that's been about him, and he has absolutely given no one any indication why he did what he did, right? It's like DB Cooper, man. Where'd he go in the plane?
Yeah.
And like, what happened, Carl? What's the story here? The mystique, the mystery. I mean, I agree with you, Charlie. Somewhere down the road, maybe that'll be uncovered. Why he did what he did, and maybe if you read the one take is he was so pissed at NASCAR and felt like he got wronged, he would never have a chance, right? If you believe that, then if that was to ever be true and he's to ever say, what? Let me get back. If that was really what happened. Well, maybe he was trying to protect the sport instead of coming out and saying, these bunch of people screwed me. I'm never on and on and on. I'm leaving it. You know what I mean? Leaving the sport. Maybe if he did feel that way, and I have this is pure conjecture on my part, and I'm just conjecturing this from other people's conjecture, right? And if that was the case, maybe he was protecting the sport. If he felt like they had wronged him, he didn't want anything to do with it anymore. Instead of land blasting them, they've given me my retirement for the rest of my life. I'm just going to leave it alone. Maybe. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, I feel like I could be wrong, and maybe it's because I'm wishing this to happen, but I feel like he may come back for some type of one-off race. And I only say that because when he did a couple of interviews at, I think it was Darlington last year, and some people asked him about it, and I think he's been working a little bit with Trackhouse, and he's kind of hanging around the shop with Trackhouse. He said he had done some type of sim. I can't remember exactly what he said. This was a year ago. But he said he'd been doing something in the sim. So it seems like he's getting a little bit of an itch. And I feel like it's kind of like, Dale Jr. still wants to race a couple Xfinity races every once in a while and have his kids see him race. So I don't know. I just feel like in the next couple of years, it wouldn't surprise me if Carl Edwards comes back for a one-off race. I don't know. Maybe it's because I want that to happen.
It'd be cool. I mean, it'd be very cool if you did. And he could probably pick right up about where he left off. because he was an extraordinary talent. Yeah. But so many guys, when they walk away from the sport, man, they're done. You've done it for so long, and you're used up, basically. That's what happens to good crew chiefs. Crew chiefs get used up. And I talk about crew chiefs all the time, man. Crew chiefs, they will, the good crew chiefs, and I've seen so many of them do this same thing. It doesn't seem to be quite as prevalent today because it doesn't seem like it's quite as much on them. But a crew chief would, in my day, he would breathe it, eat it, poop it, drink it, sleep it, right? It's 24/7 all the time. And those guys, and I'm talking truly 24/7 being into it, every one of them do the same thing. Somewhere, depending on when they started and whatever the age they were, but let's just say somewhere in the 40s or late 40s or whatever, they have hit a wall. All of a sudden they wake up one day, I've hit this friggin' wall. I cannot do this anymore. I'm either going to have to stop or I'm going to have to shoot myself, right? I cannot invest my whole being into doing this. And, they'd walk away, right? Then you see the crew chiefs that would kind of linger on forever. They were never as successful as those other guys, but they weren't putting everything into it, right? And they would just kind of linger on. Maybe that's what happened to Carl here. You know what I mean? A lot of guys, when they leave the sport, they're done. They don't want to come back. They want to be a part of it. But as time goes on, I know, like with me, nostalgia starts taking over a little bit, and you want to be a part of what's going on and try to help what you can help. And some guys don't leave at all. They quit driving, but they're still in there. But there's so much mystery with Carl Edwards. I'm just not sure which category he fits in, Charlie. I don't know yet. And like you said, that's what's kind of intriguing about him, right? And trying to think about it and figure it out. Maybe someday, maybe that'll be Charlie's big deal. He'll get to the bottom somehow. Or maybe we have on the Rick Mast show say, listen, dude, go and tell us. Nobody gives a shit now. Tell us, right? Who knows?
I know. I'll tell you what, just kind of random fact. So on Kenny's channel, which this is being broadcast on as you're watching right now, our most popular video ever was a couple years ago. Kenny just doing 10 minutes on his opinion on why Carl Edwards retired from NASCAR early. And it's pushing like 900,000 views. Hopefully it gets over a million in the next several months. And so, look, Kenny being a St. Louis guy and Carl Edwards, Columbia guy, they have the Missouri tie. So I know Kenny has tried to get Carl on the Kenny conversation, which maybe he does down the road. I don't think Carl wants to do a lot of media, but I also think time really does heal all wounds. If he was pissed at NASCAR, I do think as you get older, you want to see your old buddies. You do want to be remembered. It might be 10, 15, 20 years from now, but everybody, you want to go to the NASCAR alumni and have a nice dinner and drink some beers with the boys, right? I do feel like after a while, I think we'll see, maybe he doesn't race. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I think we'll see him again as he ages, hanging around tracks more.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, again, he's such a friggin' mystery. I never knew Carl, okay? So it's hard for me to kind of say, a lot of the guys, if we got some stuff going on in mystery in a little bit, not figured out, I kind of got a pretty good idea maybe where they're coming from. But this dude here, none. Rick Mast is completely out to lunch with this dude, right? I will say this. I disagreed with the Hall of Fame to start with, right? After talking with my children last night and looking at what had happened and listening to you today about the Midwest connection, I'm like, yeah, this dude definitely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I'll tell you what, Charlie, my whole problem with the Hall of Fame is in my opinion, it should have been the first year or two, we should have put 20 or 30 guys in. That's been my take all along. Get all the guys from 20, all those guys that are getting in now, like the Ralph Moody, right? Those guys I think should have been put in the first couple of years. You get all those guys out of the way, all the Banjo Matthews of the world, right? All those guys put in the sport back then to start with. Then we could start each year having a better conversation, because that's still a critical conversation that people have between the old drivers, old time guys, and the new guys, right? It's an argument every friggin' year. So if we'd have put a lot of those guys in to start with, I don't think the Hall would have set themselves up to be criticized as much as they do, right? And that's really, in my view, the only criticism I've ever had of the Hall of Fame, any picks or anything, you know?
Yeah, and this gets back to I'll keep saying kind of the same type of narrative, but to me, and this is as a sports fan, you know, this is about barstool talk. You and I, we're talking now, but I would like to think it's the same if you and I are sitting drinking a couple beers. To me, the arguments are what makes it fun. So I agree with you. It probably made more sense for NASCAR to put 30 in, but if they only put 3 in every year, it keeps the discussion alive every year. And I think that's what's fun. Like with baseball, you know, baseball, it's always, should Barry Bonds be in? How do you handle the PED guy? Should this guy be in? Are they letting everybody in? And like, we all get passionate about it. We know it's, at the end of the day, it's not that huge of a deal, but it's kind of fun to talk about.
Yeah, and you're right, Charlie. That what you just said has been the same thing thrown back at me when I express my feelings about that. I've heard that from numerous people. This exact same thing you said.